Hi, my name's Corinne. While I was unconscious in the ICU, fighting for my life, my sister stole nearly $700,000 from me. And my mother? She tried to take control of everything I owned, then stood over my hospital bed and said I was playing the victim. They thought I wouldn't wake up. They thought I wouldn't remember. They planned their future on the idea that I wouldn't survive. But I did. And when I quietly showed them the truth, I watched their faces drain white. What would you do if the people who raised you also planned your disappearance? Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. Because this story, it's one you'll want to sit with till the very end. The first thing I remember was the cold. Not the kind of cold you get from bad weather, but the kind that sits in your bones. Hospital cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, soft beeping from a machine filled the silence. My throat burned like sandpaper. I tried to lift my hand, but it felt like bricks were tied to my arms. "Hey there, you're safe," a nurse whispered gently, touching my wrist. "You're at Memorial Hermann. You've been through surgery. Try not to move too much. And whatever you do, don't take off this wristband until you're discharged, okay?" I blinked at the white band wrapped around my wrist. Plastic, tight, marked with my name and date of birth. That simple thing somehow grounded me in reality more than her voice did. I stared at it, breathing slow. That band meant I was alive, but I had no idea what happened before now. This was the weakest I had ever felt in my life. Powerless, confused. No mask to hide behind, no quick comebacks or control. Just me, blinking at the ceiling, feeling like I'd been wiped out and glued back together wrong. "You've been out for a few days," the nurse added, checking my chart. "Do you remember anything?" I didn't. Not the accident, not the pain, not even the ambulance. I swallowed hard. "Where's my phone?" The nurse hesitated. "Your family already picked up your things. Your phone, your purse." That made me freeze. "That's not how it works, is it?" She gave me a tight smile. "It's not typical, but someone signed for them. A family member. Karen?" Karen. Of course. My sister. My older, always has an answer, knows everything's sister. I looked at the wristband again, a flicker of unease rising in my chest. Just then, the door opened, and in she came. Too loud for a hospital room, too cheery for someone who'd supposedly just watched her sister nearly die. "Well, look who finally decided to wake up," she grinned, walking in with her oversized leather purse and a cup of Starbucks like she was visiting a friend in recovery, not her own flesh and blood in ICU. "Hey, kiddo." She hadn't called me that since I was 14. I tried to sit up, wincing. "You took my phone?" She laughed like it was no big deal. "Yeah, I grabbed your stuff. You had too much lying around. I figured I'd help keep things from getting lost." She placed her drink down on the rolling tray beside my bed, like she owned the room. There was something in her tone, too casual, too smooth. It wasn't just that she had my phone, it was how she said it. Like everything that was mine was hers now by default. I didn't respond, couldn't. My body was too tired, and my brain was trying to catch up. She sat in the chair beside me, started rambling about the accident, how I'd been found unconscious, how lucky I was. She smiled too much. She didn't ask how I was feeling. Karen had always been the golden child. Lorraine, our mother, made sure of it. Karen was the smart one, the reliable one. I was the sensitive one, the youngest, the one who got told to just let it go at every family gathering, who got guilted into silence to keep the peace. I remembered birthdays where Karen forgot, and I still bought her a gift. Remembered the way she spoke for me in front of relatives, like I wasn't even in the room. Whenever I was sick or struggling, she leaned in. Not to support me, but to get close enough to take something. It was never obvious. It was always help. After a few minutes, she stepped out to take a call. I used that moment to ask the nurse for a tablet. She brought me one, clean and unlocked. I could barely move my fingers, but I managed. My bank app loaded slow. I stared at the spinning circle for what felt like forever. And then, there it was. Over $600,000 gone. 2 separate transfers. $320,000 and $370,000. Dates from the past week, followed by charges for what looked like designer handbags, luxury hotels, and some kind of spa retreat. My mouth went dry. My breathing quickened. I pressed my palm to my chest, trying to settle my heart rate before the monitor beside me blared. The room spun slightly. She stole from me. Corinne, my own sister. She didn't just take my things, she emptied everything. The door clicked. I slammed the tablet shut just as she walked back in. "Everything okay in here?" she said sweetly, setting her phone on the table. "I brought you a new pair of socks. The nurse said your feet were cold." I stared at her, my voice barely a whisper. "Why were there transfers from my account?" She blinked, just once. And then her smile returned. "Oh, that? Yeah, I cleaned up a bit of your financial chaos. I figured someone had to." She said it like she was doing me a favor, like she was fixing a mess I made. There was no apology in her voice, not even a hint of remorse. I didn't push, not yet. I needed to understand how deep this went. I looked down again at the white hospital wristband, the cheap plastic strip that meant I was supposed to be protected. I had been unconscious. She knew it. And she took advantage of it. She had smiled at the nurse, signed the form, walked away with everything I thought was safe. I felt something in me crack, not loudly, not all at once, just a shift. When she left again, some excuse about needing to make another call, I heard it, the whisper. "No, she doesn't know yet. I'll handle it." I couldn't see her, but I knew it was her voice. And in that moment, something inside me stopped being afraid. I didn't know how long I sat there after she stepped out, but the silence didn't last. The door flung open with a jolt. The scent of expensive perfume hit first. Floral, powdery, sharp. Then her voice followed, and it sliced through the air. "Are you seriously pulling this stunt now, Corinne?" It was my mother, Lorraine. She didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't touch my hand, didn't even look me in the eye right away. She stood at the foot of the hospital bed, with her arms crossed and her mouth already set in judgment. "You always find the worst times to make things about you," she said, eyes narrowing. "You're in the ICU, and instead of being grateful, you're stirring up drama. Again." I couldn't speak. Not from fear. My throat just couldn't keep up with the shock. My mother had always been like this. Cold, elegant, calculated. She wore her cruelty like pearls. Quiet, polished, undeniable. "I don't even know what you're talking about," I rasped, my voice cracking. She rolled her eyes. "Don't start the victim act, Corinne. I'm too tired for it. Corinne told me everything." I blinked. Everything. What did everything even mean? I had just woken up a few hours ago. "She told me you've been shifting money behind our backs," she said, her tone getting sharper. "And now you're trying to blame her for your mess. You've always been reckless, but this is beyond irresponsible." I tried to sit up straighter, but a sharp pain shot through my ribs. I winced and fell back against the pillow. That didn't stop her. "You know how this looks?" she said. "We have a family name to protect. You think I raised you to behave like some manipulative little child who hides behind hospital walls and cries foul?" The words hit harder than the pain in my chest. I felt like I was 6 years old again, standing in the kitchen while she snapped at me for something I didn't do. I had no voice back then either. I looked at her, really looked. Her posture was straight as ever, her purse clutched tight under one arm. That was always her signal. When she felt morally justified, she'd hold on to that bag like it was her gavel in court. She didn't come here for truth. She came here to enforce the verdict. The door opened again. Karen stepped in with her perfect hair and faux concern. She looked at Mom, then me, and put on that voice, the one she saved for funerals and fundraisers. I didn't want to say anything at first. She sighed, eyes glassy. She's not well. I thought maybe when she was stronger we could talk, but… Mom, I had no choice. No choice about what? I managed. Karen turned to me with a look I used to believe was compassion. You started moving large sums of money. I thought something was wrong. I tried to cover for you, Corinne. I tried to clean it up quietly so it wouldn't become a scandal. She turned back to our mother. Now she's accusing me. Can you believe that? My stomach twisted. Lorraine didn't hesitate. Of course I can believe it. This is what she does. My voice barely made it out. I didn't touch my accounts. No one responded. It was like I was wallpaper in the room. Karen walked closer and rested a hand on the edge of my bed. You probably don't remember, she said gently. You were confused. Maybe the meds. I was unconscious, I cut in. Silence. Lorraine scoffed. Well, your name is all over the paperwork. The bank called me this morning. They said the transfers came from your authorization. They said Karen stepped in to keep things from collapsing. Something inside me pulled tight. How did the bank even speak to her? Who gave them that story? I knew how banks worked. They didn't hand over that kind of detail without proof, without identity verification. Someone had built this story behind my back and fed it to the people I was supposed to trust. I turned my eyes toward the wristband again. Same name, same barcode. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. That thin plastic strip was the only thing confirming I still existed in this mess. And yet somehow, I was already being erased. Later that morning, a nurse came in and said my mother had requested a family meeting room. Just to talk, she said, avoiding eye contact. They wheeled me into a small windowless space that smelled like old paper and lemon-scented cleaner. Karen sat already, legs crossed, back straight, her blazer perfectly pressed. Lorraine stood, arms folded, pacing like a lawyer before a jury. I sat there in a wheelchair, a hospital gown wrapped around my frame, socks mismatched. I was literally and figuratively beneath them. Let's get this over with, Lorraine said. I glanced between them, my throat raw, my pulse rising. And then something inside me settled. There was no use yelling, no use pleading. That was what they expected. So I looked at both of them and said, I didn't move a single dollar. I was unconscious. You know that. Karen tilted her head. We're not accusing you. We're just saying, maybe you made a mistake. A mistake? I asked. While in a coma. Lorraine inhaled sharply. Don't get smart. This attitude won't help you. But Karen blinked. Just once. That blink told me something. She was nervous. She'd built a narrative, and now she saw the cracks in it. Before I could say more, there was a knock at the door. A hospital staffer peeked in. Ms. Corinne, there's a call from your bank. They said it's urgent. The phone was warm in my hand. I held it tighter than I probably needed to, bracing for whatever came next. Ms. Corinne, the voice on the other end said. It was a woman, professional, polite, but firm. I'm calling from the fraud division at your bank. We flagged a recent transaction attempt and need to verify some activity on your accounts. I tried to sit up straighter, my heart suddenly louder than the machines around me. Okay, I said, barely above a whisper. What kind of activity? She paused. There was an attempted withdrawal for $90,000 in cash. It was blocked, but before that, 3 large wire transfers were processed. Altogether, it totals $690,000. I felt the air drain out of the room. That wasn't me, I said. Silence stretched before she responded. To clarify, you did not authorize any of those transactions? No, I said, firmer this time. I was unconscious. She exhaled slowly. Thank you for confirming. That aligns with our internal review. From the corner of my eye, I saw Karen stiffen. Lorraine looked up from her phone, her mouth set in a flat line. I do have to inform you, the banker continued, the individual who attempted the withdrawal had full access to your personal information. They provided your social security number, home address, online PIN, and even answered your security questions. My mouth went dry. How's that possible? That's what we're trying to determine, she replied. But during our recorded call, the individual also identified herself verbally. My hands trembled. She said she was your sister. Karen didn't move, didn't blink. But I saw the flash of something in her eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Fear. That must be a mistake, Lorraine said quickly, too quickly. You must have misunderstood. The woman on the phone replied calmly. It was recorded. Would you like a copy sent to your email on file? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I ended the call, letting the phone rest in my lap like it weighed 1,000 pounds. For a few moments, no one spoke. Then, quietly, my mind drifted. I was 11 again. I could still see it, the shattered glass from the antique candy jar that used to sit on the mantel. It had been in the family for generations. I hadn't even touched it, but Karen had screamed, crying crocodile tears, claiming I knocked it over. She ran to Mom, and like always, Mom didn't ask what happened. Corinne, apologize, she had said, like it was routine, and I had, because it was easier, because I didn't matter enough to be believed. Back then, it was just a candy jar. Now it was my entire life. I looked up. Karen stood slowly. Her voice turned syrupy again. You begged me, she said, loud and confident, to help clean up that old mess you made. You told me months ago to handle it if anything ever happened. I blinked. What? Lorraine added quickly. It's true. You even said during Christmas you were overwhelmed and needed support. Don't you remember? I stared at them, disbelieving. This was no longer about confusion or misunderstanding. They were rewriting the story in real time, and doing it with straight faces. You gave me your login info, Karen continued. You told me to do what I had to do. My head shook before I could stop it. I didn't. But they weren't listening. They were louder, firmer, filling the air with words they wanted to become truth. And I understood in that awful moment that they weren't confused. They weren't mistaken. They were choosing the version where I lose. I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not panic. Something deeper, more still. Resolve. A nurse came in then, young, calm, unaware of the hurricane in the room. She held a clipboard. Ms. Corinne, we need you to sign updated forms from earlier in your stay, she said. Karen stepped forward. She's exhausted. I can sign. The nurse barely looked at her. Only the patient can sign. Hospital policy. Also, just a heads up, our cameras record all visitors to ICU rooms. Just for the record. That last part landed like a soft, warning shot. Karen's smile faltered. Her hand slowly dropped to her side. I nodded. Took the clipboard. My hands were still shaky, but I signed. My name. Mine. When the nurse stepped closer to adjust my wristband afterward, I looked down at it. That cheap piece of plastic had my name, date of birth, and a barcode. But in this whole mess, it was the only thing that still said I existed. And I thought, everything about me has been handled, twisted, or stolen by people who say they love me. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just a victim. I was a witness. They hadn't broken me. Not yet. I handed the clipboard back. The nurse nodded and left. A few minutes passed before I asked to be taken back to my room. The nurse came with a wheelchair. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The hallway felt longer this time. Every light overhead hummed like a warning. As we turned the corner toward my room, I saw two men in uniform standing by the door. Hospital security. They looked serious, calm, prepared. One of them stepped forward. "Ms. Corinne," he said, "we need to show you something, and you may want to sit." I didn't need to sit. My legs were already too weak to hold me. The officer gently pushed the wheelchair down the hallway, while Karen and Lorraine followed, stiff and silent. We stopped at a small room tucked behind the ICU station. The lights overhead flickered slightly. There was a computer screen already pulled up. The officer looked at me, then at the two women behind me. "This will be brief," he said, clicking play. The screen filled with grainy footage from the hallway camera outside my room. I recognized the timestamp. It was 2 days before I woke up. The camera view was angled, but clear. Karen walked down the corridor, alone, carrying her oversized purse and that confident, self-important stride she'd always had when no one was watching her. She paused at my door, glanced around, then pushed it open and slipped inside. The officer skipped ahead. The next clip showed her leaving the room 15 minutes later. Her purse looked slightly bulkier. "Pause it," I said quietly. The officer rewound and zoomed in. The image wasn't perfect, but I could see it. She had my wallet in her hand when she first walked in. She opened it, took out my bank card. Then, slowly, deliberately, she removed my driver's license, held both up to her phone, and snapped photos. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Karen's face went pale. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Lorraine let out a long, shaky breath. "This doesn't prove anything," she muttered, arms crossed. "She could have been making sure your things were safe." Karen jumped on that. "Exactly. I didn't take anything. I was protecting your stuff. I mean, who else was gonna do it?" The officer folded his arms. "There were no other visitors on record that day, just you." I could feel my chest tighten, not from fear this time, but from something deeper. Karen was unraveling. Her voice got sharper, more defensive. "You know how nurses are in these places," she snapped. "Things go missing. I was just being careful." I stared at her. After everything, she was still performing. For me, for the officer, for our mother. And Lorraine. She stood back, lips pursed, trying to hold on to the image of Karen as the responsible daughter. A bitter, familiar ache rose up in me. I was 17 again, standing in our tiny kitchen with tears in my eyes. I'd saved every paycheck from my summer job at the diner, tips in an envelope tucked under my mattress. I planned to use it for college books. Then, one morning, it was gone. I remember telling Mom. Her first reaction wasn't concern, it was annoyance. "Well, maybe you misplaced it," she had said. 2 nights later, I heard Karen laughing with her friends on the porch. "Found some cash," she bragged. "Guess it's mine now." And like every other time, I said nothing, because speaking up always meant being told I was dramatic, too emotional, making trouble. But now, something in me had snapped quietly. I wiped my eyes, but no tears came. "I'm done," I said softly. Done being the quiet one. The nurse entered just then, holding a clipboard. "We found something odd in Ms. Corinne's chart," she said. "A consent form was signed during her sedation. It doesn't match the nurse's records or timeline." She handed the clipboard to the officer. "This isn't Corinne's signature." I looked at it. It was shaky but familiar. Karen's handwriting, disguised but obvious to anyone who'd seen years of her sticky notes on the fridge. Karen flushed red. "You're reading it wrong. Corinne probably signed that before surgery and forgot." The nurse's tone shifted, firmer now. Ma'am, she was fully sedated. That signature was recorded after the anesthesia was administered. She couldn't have held a pen. Lorraine shook her head, as if refusing to let the words land. This is going too far. Corinne, what are you trying to do to your own sister? People were beginning to look into the room. A couple of patients walked past, whispering. Karen raised her voice, pointing at me. She twists everything. She always has. This is who she's always been, blaming others when she messes up. I stayed silent, but I could feel everyone watching. Lorraine turned sharply toward me. You're making a scene. Enough. But I didn't flinch. Then, the officer spoke again. Because of what we've uncovered, he said, the hospital is obligated to file a formal report regarding unauthorized access and potential forgery. Karen nearly lost her balance. Lorraine's face twisted. Look what you've done to your own sister. You should be ashamed. That one landed harder than the rest. It hit the part of me that had spent decades trying to keep the peace, trying not to rock the boat. But something was different now. I looked up at the officer. I'm ready to give my statement. He nodded. We were moving toward the doorway when another man entered the room, dressed in a blazer, his badge clipped to his belt. Before we proceed, he said gently, looking at me, there's something else you need to see. He placed a slim folder on the table. This one, he said, sliding it toward me, may change everything. I stared at the folder for a moment, my fingers hesitant. The room felt heavier than before, the air thick with unspoken truths. I opened it slowly, each page sliding into view like a weight on my chest. The first document stared back at me, my name scribbled across the bottom in handwriting that was supposed to be mine. But I knew that pen stroke. It wasn't mine. It was Corinne's. It was a financial authorization form stamped 3 days ago, right when I had a breathing tube in my throat and couldn't even whisper my own name. I kept turning the pages. A permission to access belongings form. Another one marked emergency financial release. Then a patient representative declaration. Each one bore my name. Each one had been processed while I was unconscious. My hand began to shake. The pages blurred, not from tears. I couldn't cry anymore, but from the wave of dread rising in my chest. Karen stood a few feet away, arms folded, her face stiff like someone waiting for the lie to settle in her favor. Lorraine's voice broke the silence. This is ridiculous. She's framing your sister. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. The truth wasn't just sitting in front of me. It was stacked, verified, filed, sealed into the system while I laid helpless in a hospital bed. I lowered the folder and sat back in the chair. My legs were too numb to hold me upright. My body folded in on itself and I let it. The walls didn't spin. They just closed in. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel hate. I felt done, exhausted, hollow. Why? I whispered, mostly to myself. Why always me? I wasn't asking them. I was asking the decades of silence, the years I had swallowed everything they fed me, just to keep the peace. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I had trained them to treat me like this. My voice trembled. I should have been more careful. Karen lifted her head like a hawk spotting an opening. Lorraine stepped forward, nodding like this was the apology she thought she deserved. Yes, Lorraine said. Finally, she admits it. I felt myself disappearing again, like I had so many times growing up, when I tried to explain, tried to defend, only to be talked over, shut down, or worse, ignored. I opened my mouth to finish the sentence. I should have. Then I stopped. A gentle hand landed on my shoulder, warm, present, real. I looked up. It was a nurse, one of the few who had checked on me regularly during recovery. You need to know something, she said softly. The room fell silent. She looked at me, then at Karen and Lorraine. The only person who pushed to be listed as your representative, she said slowly, was your sister. My head lifted slightly. And your mother, she added, put pressure on the staff to approve it. Said it was a family emergency. Karen shifted uncomfortably. Lorraine looked like she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. I blinked. Not because I was surprised, but because, finally, someone had said it out loud. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't exaggerating. They had orchestrated it, together. Something inside me stirred. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't even a whisper. It was just awareness. I deserve better than this. I reached for the last page in the folder. It was loose, not stamped, not official. A handwritten note folded in half. To the representative of Corinne L., it read. She won't remember any of this. Just sign. The handwriting was unmistakable. Karen. And in the top corner, 2 initials scrawled quickly. L.M. Lorraine. I folded the note carefully, like it was something delicate, precious in its betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at them, said nothing. And that silence did something neither of them expected. Karen's jaw clenched. Lorraine took a step back. For once I wasn't pleading or defending or asking to be believed. I just let the silence do the talking. And it hit harder than anything I could have said. The administrator, still standing by the door, cleared his throat. There's one more report coming in, he said. And it directly involves the money. He walked back to the table and placed a second folder in front of me. This one, he said, looking me straight in the eye, names the person who transferred the $690K. I didn't breathe as he flipped open the second folder. It felt like the room itself held its breath with me. He slid the printed report toward me and said nothing. He didn't need to. The facts were louder than any words. Right there, in bold type, line by line, were the wire transfers, each one mapped with a timestamp, IP address, and access point. Every login came from the same device, same location, and the sender's name, Karen Lynn. No aliases, no abbreviations, her full name, her fingerprints on every digital trail. I could feel the pulse in my temples. A slow burn of disbelief. Lorraine leaned forward, trying to read upside down. Her voice cracked just a bit. This doesn't prove it was her. Anyone could have used her name. Maybe it's identity theft, or someone setting her up. But the administrator cut in, firm and quiet. The access came from her home IP address, confirmed multiple times. I looked at Karen. She didn't flinch, not at first. But her jaw tensed, her hands curled slightly at her sides. Then the denial came, loud, defensive. This is a witch hunt, she snapped. You've always wanted to ruin me. Since we were kids, you've hated me, Corinne. I didn't move. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I finally understood that reacting would only give her more to twist. Lorraine started yelling too, at the staff this time. You're all just taking sides. This is family business. You don't know the full story. Their noise filled the room, but I didn't join in. I sat still, and in that stillness, something changed. My silence wasn't passive anymore. It carried weight. I looked down at the pages again. My eyes traced the lines slowly. I felt the storm inside me settle into something, colder, sharper. If I stay silent, I thought, they'll bury me. If I speak, I save myself. I straightened. I'd like copies of everything, I said clearly. The room went quiet, just for a beat. Then Karen barked, You can't do that. These aren't even yours to take. I turned my head and met her eyes. I want every document, every page. No stammer, no begging, no fear. The administrator gave a small nod and walked out with the folder to make copies. That's when it happened. Karen lunged across the table, her fingers gripping the folder before it was fully out of reach. She yanked it toward herself, pages slipping free. 2 crumpled in her fists. "Give that back!" I shouted, standing instinctively. She tried to tear them. I grabbed the edge of the folder, pulling it toward me. It wasn't a fight like on TV. No flailing arms or flying chairs. It was quick, tense, quiet. But it was real. One of the pages ripped in half. Another fluttered to the floor. The door swung open fast. A security officer stepped between us and pulled the folder from Karen's hand. Her shoulders dropped as she sank back into her chair. Her hair was a mess. Her blouse wrinkled, her cheeks flushed the kind of red that doesn't fade quickly. Several nurses had gathered in the hall just outside, a few visitors too, watching, whispering. Lorraine stepped forward and gently patted Karen's shoulder. But even her eyes were darting, searching for a way out of this scene. I bent down, picked up the torn page, and smoothed it against the table. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Karen had done what she always feared most. She had exposed herself. I sat back in my chair and exhaled slowly. My body was buzzing, but not from fear. It was clarity. I'd spent years thinking I was keeping the peace by staying quiet. But I wasn't keeping peace. I was just giving them space to keep hurting me. That ends now. The security officer addressed us with calm authority. If there's another outburst, we'll have to remove all visitors from this floor. Karen stayed silent. Lorraine didn't. She turned to me and muttered, "This is your fault. You escalated this. You're tearing the family apart." I looked at her and let those words fall flat. They didn't sting like they used to. I didn't absorb them. I just observed them for what they were, a tired script she'd been reading my whole life. The administrator returned, this time with a thick packet of freshly printed pages. He handed them to me, then looked toward the hallway. "Corinne," he said, lowering his voice, "we also found something else in the financial logs." He motioned for me to follow him. I stood, gripping the papers, and glanced at Karen and Lorraine one last time. Neither of them met my gaze. He opened a nearby door to a smaller consultation room. As I stepped inside, he quietly closed it behind us. "This part," he said gently, "involves your mother." My fingers tightened around the folder resting in my lap. Something inside me braced instinctively. I felt the stillness in that private counseling room thicken, like the oxygen itself had turned heavy. I nodded once, too afraid my voice would crack if I spoke. The administrator sat across from me, placing a second set of documents on the small table. His tone didn't change, but I noticed his eyes had softened. He was preparing me for something I couldn't be prepared for. "These are from a separate audit. It's not about the transfers, it's about who tried to access your information before and after your admission." He turned the first page toward me. My name sat at the top in bold black type, followed by lines of digital activity logs, failed login attempts, password resets, recovery email triggers, one success, all tied to the same IP address. My blood turned to ice. "These all trace back to a home in Houston," he continued, "belonging to Lorraine." I blinked. Once, twice. I leaned forward, squinting at the timestamps. 2 weeks before I ended up in the hospital, 3 days after, and again on the same night I was admitted. "She tried to log into your accounts multiple times," he said, "and one of them succeeded." I sank slowly back into the chair. The folder slid slightly from my lap, but I didn't pick it up. No. I tried to tell myself it was a mistake. Maybe she was helping. Maybe she was panicking, looking for my insurance. Maybe. But that wasn't true, and I knew it. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about care. It was about control. All those years she told me I gave too much away. "You're too trusting, Corinne. You always let people walk over you." But she was the one trying to take. right in the middle of my unconsciousness. The administrator spoke again, his voice gentler now. "We believe Corinne didn't do this alone. There's strong evidence your mother helped her access your accounts. I'm obligated to inform you, this could be viewed as conspiracy to commit fraud." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Something inside me had stopped moving. It wasn't anger this time. It wasn't even grief. It was a kind of cold, hollow disbelief. Like I was standing on the ruins of something I hadn't realized was broken until now. I nodded faintly, more to myself than to him. When the door opened behind me and I stepped out into the hallway, the air felt sharper, colder than before. I could hear voices echoing down the corridor, familiar voices. I followed the sounds slowly. Corinne was pacing, arms crossed tight across her chest. Lorraine sat stiffly on a bench, her purse clenched like it was trying to escape her grasp. They were arguing, again. They didn't notice me at first. I stood a few feet away, watching. Karen's voice rose. "You told me you were going to handle it." Lorraine snapped back. "Well, I wouldn't have had to if she'd just signed the AI documents before she got herself half dead." And then, Lorraine saw me. She stood up so quickly her purse nearly toppled over. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Are you finally done playing the victim?" she spat. My body froze. Every sound faded except those words. "Are you finally done playing the victim?" I don't know what I expected her to say. Maybe denial, maybe even an apology, if the world had turned upside down. But that was the knife. Karen turned toward me too, sneering, arms still folded. "You're doing this to humiliate us. You think this makes you look brave?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Just then, a nurse walking by slowed her steps. She looked between us, hesitant, uncertain, then finally stepped forward. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady but low. "I overheard, but I think you need to know something. We have footage from the ICU. Security cameras picked up your mother and sister entering your room the night before your transfer." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. "They stayed almost 20 minutes, she continued, "went through your belongings. We have audio, too. It caught everything." Lorraine's face lost all color. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. I felt my knees weaken for half a second, but I didn't fall. Everything. There was no walking this back, no justifying it, no warping it into another one of their stories. Lorraine finally stammered, "That's not possible. Someone must have set us up. This is outrageous." Karen jumped in, frantic now. "You're overreacting. It's being twisted." Around us, nurses had slowed their pace. A couple visitors turned their heads. A doctor paused mid-step. This was no longer a private breakdown. This was a public unraveling. And for the first time, I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. I stood quietly, and I saw them clearly, not as the family I'd spent decades trying to earn love from, but as two people terrified of finally being held accountable. I understood in that moment that there was nothing left to fight for. No apology would undo this. No excuse could make it palatable. This wasn't just about theft. It was betrayal, deep and intimate. And I was done begging them to stop. I felt the shift inside me, like something had snapped clean, not in pain, but in clarity. And in its place came something steady. Cold, yes, but solid. The administrator reappeared, walking toward us with measured steps. "Corinne," he said, "the security team is ready. They'd like you to review the footage before they take next steps. It may help determine how we proceed." Karen threw her arms up. "You're manipulating her," Lorraine shouted. "You can't do this. You think you're better than your own blood?" "You'll regret this," Karen hissed. But I didn't turn to them, not once. I walked beside the administrator without a word, every footstep echoing louder than their. Voices. Halfway down the hallway, a nurse fell in beside me. She kept her pace slow and voice low. "There's one more thing," she said gently. "Before you see the footage, you should know." She hesitated, her gaze lowering. "She said something about you. Your mother." I stopped walking, my breath caught. What did she say? The nurse looked straight ahead, then whispered, "She said you wouldn't survive long enough to notice what they took." Those words stuck in the air between us like a cold blade. I didn't respond. I couldn't, not yet. My legs felt rooted to the ground, but somehow I took another step, then another. The nurse walked beside me in silence. The hallway strangely quiet, except for the faint buzz of overhead lights and the distant hum of machines. We reached the security office tucked at the far end of the ICU wing. A small plaque on the door read, "Authorized personnel only." The administrator held it open, and I stepped inside. The room was dim and cool. 2 uniformed officers stood near a bank of monitors. One chair had been pulled out and turned toward a larger screen mounted on the wall. They didn't say much, just nods. Silent acknowledgement that what was about to happen mattered. I sat down, my hands felt clammy, heart unsteady. The administrator touched the keyboard. The screen blinked once, then lit up. A timestamp appeared in the corner, 2 nights ago. There I was, on that screen, unmoving, barely recognizable. Tubes ran from my mouth and nose. Monitors beeped steadily next to my bed. My body looked small, surrounded by machines and sterile light. Then the door to my hospital room opened. Lorraine walked in first, her heels soft on the tile. Karen followed close behind. Neither of them looked at me, not once. They moved straight to my purse hanging on the back of the chair. Karen rifled through it like it was hers. Her hands didn't even hesitate. She pulled out my wallet, flipped through it with a practiced rhythm, then slipped out a card. She looked at it, smiled, and showed it to Lorraine. Then, to my disbelief, she leaned in toward the bed and held her phone up. A selfie. With me, unconscious, hooked up to tubes. Her smile was wide. Lorraine watched, unmoved. The administrator didn't say a word. No one in the room did. I barely heard myself breathing. Then came the audio. Clear as day. "She's practically gone already. She won't notice a thing," Lorraine said. Karen laughed. "Then consider this our bonus." I clutched the armrests hard. My stomach turned. My mother said that. My mother. The administrator paused the video and looked at me. "Would you like to stop?" I shook my head, slow. "Keep going." The footage continued. Lorraine picked up my phone from the tray table. Tried a few swipes, failed. Then, on the 4th attempt, it unlocked. Karen leaned over. Together, they opened my banking app. They scrolled, paused, whispered something. They took photos. They took screenshots. They stared at the numbers like they'd just won the lottery. They didn't even glance at me, not once. The timestamp blinked again. Everything was confirmed, verified. Then it happened. Lorraine leaned in, looked down at me, at my face, and said, "If she doesn't make it, it solves everything." Karen replied, almost too quickly, "Exactly. No more guilt, no more burden." I covered my mouth, but the sob still escaped. This was the lowest place I'd ever been. This was what betrayal looked like, what it sounded like when it wore your blood. The screen went dark. No one spoke. My face was wet with tears, but I didn't feel them anymore. I just sat there, letting the pain move through me, not avoiding it, not trying to reframe it, just letting it burn. Then, like a quiet shift beneath the surface, something in me snapped. I wasn't broken. I was done. Done asking why, done making room, done carrying the weight of their damage. The administrator's voice returned, careful and slow. "Corinne, would you like to press charges?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. He nodded. There's more. This afternoon, your mother filed for emergency conservatorship over your finances. It was flagged by our legal team. That heat in my chest wasn't grief this time. It was power. I stood up. My knees didn't buckle. I followed him down the hallway toward the waiting room. My pace was calm, but everything inside me was focused, solid. Lorraine and Karen stood the moment they saw me. What did they tell you? Lorraine snapped. This is all lies. Karen's voice sharpened. They're manipulating you. You don't even know what's real anymore. I said nothing. I walked to the small table near the wall, pulled out the documents the administrator had given me, the audit trail, the security photos, the printed transcript of their voices, and laid them down one by one. They leaned in and froze. Karen's face went white. Lorraine's lips parted, but no words came. Around us, people were watching. 2 nurses at the desk turned their heads. A man holding a coffee paused mid-step. I looked up at them, my mother and sister, these women who'd built an empire of silence around me for years. I said only one sentence. You planned for my death. I planned for the truth. The room fell silent. Security stepped forward. Ma'am, we'll need you to leave the building now. Lorraine stumbled back. Karen's voice cracked. You can't do this. You're ruining the family. They were escorted out. No yelling, no resistance, just the shuffle of footsteps and the echo of a door closing behind them. I stood there for a moment, still, tired, but finally free. I turned, walking slowly back down the hallway. My body felt heavy, not with fear anymore, but with release. For the first time in my life, I knew I'd never let them close again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. One new message, unknown number. It read, "You think you won, but this isn't over." That message glared back at me from the phone screen. I didn't need to guess who sent it. The wording, the timing, the quiet threat behind it. That was Corinne's style. Always trying to get the last word. Always needing the upper hand, even when she was the one who created the mess. But instead of fear, something calmer settled in my chest. I blocked the number, just like that. No ceremony, no hesitation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of either of them. Rain tapped lightly against the hospital window the next morning, soft and steady. The sky was gray, the kind of gray Houston gets before the heat takes over again. I woke slowly, every muscle tender. My ribs still ached from the accident, but the heavier ache was deeper, more emotional than physical. Still, something in me felt anchored, settled. I had made it through the worst. A knock on my door pulled me back. My attorney stepped in, a heavy folder tucked under one arm. He looked rested, which meant he'd probably been working through the night. I went through everything, he said, taking the chair beside me. You have an airtight case. We'll file for criminal charges and a restraining order today. I nodded. No debate, no second guessing. He opened the folder again. There's something you need to see. Inside was a packet of stamped paperwork. My mother's signature was at the bottom of each page. This, he said, tapping the date, was filed the same afternoon you nearly died in surgery. My breath caught. Emergency conservatorship. The wording claimed I was unstable, incapable, delusional. That she needed immediate control over my assets for the safety of the family. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Of course she did. For years, I believed my mother's worst flaw was denying my pain, dismissing it. But this proved that her denial wasn't passive. It had purpose, a strategy, a pattern, and she hid it behind the word motherhood. By the end of the week, I was strong enough to stand with a cane. My attorney walked on one side of me, a nurse on the other, as we climbed the courthouse steps. The morning air was cool after days of rain. Clouds still hung low, but the storm had passed. Inside, he filed the stack of documents: criminal charges, civil suit, restraining order, a motion blocking any conservatorship attempts. Each stamp landed with a satisfying finality. When we stepped back outside, voices echoed across the courtyard. "There she is! Corinne!" Her hair was frizzy from the humidity. Mascara smeared under her eyes like she'd been crying or screaming. She rushed toward us, pointing at me as if she were the victim. "You ruined my life!" she yelled. "Mom is sick because of you. You're tearing this family apart." People around us stopped walking. A couple waiting for an Uber stared. A man sitting on the bench shifted away from her. She wasn't intimidating. She looked unhinged. Security approached immediately. "Ma'am, you need to step back." But she kept yelling. "You're ungrateful, after everything we did for you." I didn't say a word, not one. Silence had become my shield, and strangely, my strength. Security escorted her off the property, her voice fading behind us. My attorney glanced at me. "You handled that remarkably well." "I've had years of practice." That evening, after I returned home for the first time since the accident, I found a voicemail waiting on my phone. Lorraine's voice filled the room when I pressed play. "I never meant for things to go this far," she said, her tone sharp, not remorseful. "But you forced my hand. A mother deserves respect. You brought this on yourself." I listened once, then deleted it. There was no relief in doing that, just an ache. The kind of ache that comes from realizing someone you wanted to love, you simply doesn't know how. A week later, a certified letter arrived. I opened it at the kitchen table, still getting used to the quiet of my own home again. Inside was a single check for $1 and a brief handwritten note. "This is all I can give you. It symbolizes the value of our relationship now." Signed, Lorraine. It was petty, cruel, and at the same time, so perfectly in character for her that I wasn't even surprised. I slipped it into a manila envelope labeled evidence and set it aside. Then, alone in my kitchen, I let myself cry. Not for them. For the girl I used to be, the one who believed she could earn their love if she just tried harder. Healing wasn't instant. It came in pieces. I started physical therapy twice a week, therapy with a counselor 3 times a month, and daily calls with my aunt in Dallas, the only person in my family who had ever treated me like I mattered. For the first time in a long while, I could picture a life without Lorraine and Karen circling me like storms. And that vision didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. One evening, I sat on my small porch, wrapped in a throw blanket, watching the sun dip behind the houses across the street. The cicadas had quieted, and for a moment the whole neighborhood felt still. "They took money," I whispered to myself. "They tried to take my life, but they didn't take me. Not my voice, not my mind, not my future." I leaned back in my chair, letting the warm air settle around me. "Family doesn't break you," I said softly. "People do, and sometimes they happen to be family." A long breath left my body, a steady, grounded breath. "You can survive that. You can rebuild, and you deserve peace." I stood, walking back to my front door. My cane tapped gently against the porch boards. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't lock it in anger. I just closed it. A quiet, simple closing. My choice, my boundary, my life from here on out.